Welcome, BBCers, to episode number 205 of the Broken by Concept podcast, the number one solo queue educational and motivational podcast. Top Lane special episode today, guys. We're going to be talking all about the Top Lane Academy that Curtis, myself, and Charlie have been working on for the last 4 months. This is our below Emerald program. Who is Charlie? If you're a really old school BBC listener, you'll probably know about Charlie, who was behind the camera. He'll chip in for some questions here and there.
Deep in the lore.
That was our episode 100 to like 110. So Charles has been...
A little bit more than that, I reckon.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of like when you got really involved.
I think Charlie goes way further back, right? Well, because if you're deep in...
Yeah.
He's in esports. So if you're familiar with our history in esports with Direwolves, Charlie actually worked with Direwolves as the head coach.
Curtis recruited Charles.
That's how I met these guys.
Yeah, that's how we met. And then we just kind of crossed paths again after the esports kind of, glory days. And Charlie's been more so kind of working with Nathan first in the kind of the
jungle.
Yeah.
Charles was basically a jungler all last year.
And I will say one thing about Charlie, that Charlie he's an old school player, but Charlie has played pretty much all roles to high elo. So, I've seen him play basically every single role to Master Plus at some stage in his journey.
And it was initially, the first time you got Challenger was with AD Carry, right?
Briefly reached Challenger with Eddie Carey in Season 9.
Grandmaster Support Season 11?
Season 10, 11, yep.
10, 11, and then it went to Jungle.
Jungle, Season 13, I was, around 800 LP.
Yep. And then now you're just a top lane connoisseur.
Now I'm trying my hand at top lane, yeah.
That's right. So currently, in terms of what we're doing to make all these guides, so Charles is currently, just for people's experience, currently, Curtis and I always say, respecting our current rank.
Yep.
Charles is currently playing your account's Diamond 1.
That's correct.
You're playing on Master, Grandmaster players games, because it's obviously a new season.
Yep.
And you've been playing on a bit of varied accounts.
Varied accounts depends.
Also, if you look up Coach Curtis, you've got a bunch of
games. My process has been learn on a lower level account around like Diamond 4, and then but coincidentally, when I played some of the champs, I climbed with that champion to like Diamond 1 Master. So I've got two accounts in Master and one in like Diamond 4, and they've kind of been like in between there. And then we've also got Tim behind the scenes. I think it's important to mention Tim Mysterious. For those of you who are in the Mid Lane Academy, Tim has been also, contributing massively to the Top Lane Academy, helping us make these guides. So it's been a bit of a collaborative effort between us four, totally. And we're kind of like the Navy SEAL team, us four of us trying to, the thing with this Top Lane journey for us has been less about learning the champs for us individually, but, it's not enough for us to be able to just play them. We've got to be able to teach them.
Yeah.
So it's been a very collaborative effort. And I think everyone in this team has a certain view on a lot of champs and certain strengths and weaknesses. So we've been trying to bounce ideas off each other. Certain players, one of us might click with one of the champs more than others. So it's been quite interesting to kind of work with multiple people rather than myself. You would make jungle guys by yourself back in the day. I've been making mid lane guys for myself. And so now, being a bit more collaborative, it's been very interesting.
So we have the champions that we have currently worked on in the program is Garen, Renekton, Urgot, Mordekaiser, Darius, Gwen, and Sett. We did a sort of a soft launch of the Top Lane Academy about a month ago. So we've been working with 60 members currently with these champions. That's part of being our learning process of teaching the game and seeing the common mistakes, looking at what they're sort of struggling with, what are things that we need to focus on for future guides. Those are our current champs, and the champs that we're going to be adding, working on over the next couple of weeks, months, is going to be Camille Jax Fiora. Now, we've been quite hesitant on these type of champions because I will reiterate again, this program is specifically designed for up to Emerald 4, and these are on the champs definitely on the harder side of things. We'll talk about that later. But what our approach to our programs, if you're new to the BBC Universe, We Will Teach You League, is we're very, very much ingrained champ mastery. Our perspective is you learn the game through a champion first and then sort of the game after that. So you must know how to play your champion. So what we're going to do, the structure of this episode, we're going to go through our learnings, like a little mini champion guide of all the current champions that we've got full guides for. And then after, we're going to talk a bit about our general view on top lane, how it's maybe changed over the last few months, us learning it from fresh eyes. and just a bunch of just sort of random questions. Yeah. So do we have anything more to say for the introduction before we jump in?
I think we just dive straight into Garen.
All right, so Garen. So Curtis and I talked a bit about Garen when we first talked about We Will Teach You League and us learning top lane. But now we've got Charlie here. Garen. What did we think about learning Garen? So Garen, I mean, so for me...
You're the Garen specialist, Nathan. You've probably put in more time on Garen than me and Curtis.
I have put a lot of time on Garen. When I first started learning Garen, that was when I was first learning top lane, just in general. You know, I was literally just... had an idea of wave management, but knew how to execute.
I've got a question for you. So you started your top lane journey on Garen, and you had to learn... you had to learn everything. Last hitting, wave management. How did it feel to learn those skills through the lens of Garen? Because I think that's what a lot of like other content creators and other people would say is like, oh, play Garen and learn like the fundamentals. But how did that happen?
Top lane journey.
Yeah, how was that for you? Like learning those skills through Garen. Did it work, or did you actually have to learn Garen first? Like, what was that like?
Yeah. I definitely had to learn the basics of Garen, like kill threat. You know, like you would look at my gameplay and you'd be like, why are you not igniting beforehand? You know, like just the basics of how to kill people with Garen. Yeah. But yeah, like honestly, it was a mess. Me learning Garen from the get go, because I was also playing on like Diamond 4 accounts. So I was losing every lane and match up, as well as I didn't know what my problem was.
Yes.
So it was just smashing my head against the wall initially. And yeah, I would say definitely I needed to learn just how to last hit. Honestly, that was the most basic thing. But like, how do I last hit while dealing with?
Well, I think the interesting thing for you, Nathan, is that you're in a unique position where me and Charlie have kind of had top experience, you know, in the past a little bit, whereas you're literally fresh. Right, yes. You're fresh off the boat. You're completely new, right? So
Freshborn baby.
So kind of, I guess from a coach's perspective, you're going to have a lot more insight into what the actual learning journey is going to be like, because you're literally doing it. You've been kind of through that journey.
I've made jokes. Nathan plays like a client. Like Nathan's
client.
like a member from one of our programs. He makes the same mistakes, and it's really good.
And it's actually been interesting because when me and kind of Charlie and Tim have been talking about things, Nathan's kind of view has been so kind of basic, but it's refreshing because it's like the bullshit test. It's like, well, if Nathan's not understanding this, then how the hell is a client going to understand it?
Yeah.
So in a way, like Nathan's kind of our test dummy.
He's like a compass as well. He points us in the right direction a lot of the time, especially because me and Tim and even you sometimes, we like to get into the weeds sometimes, start talking about some intricacies, and Nathan always brings it back to like
settle down, guys.
Get your wave into the enemy tower, get your wave in a good spot, know what the enemy champion does.
A big one was like trying to solo kill your opponent all the time. So when I first started, that was actually a huge problem. I've actually talked to some of our current top lane academy members, is that when I first started playing, I only tried to kill my opponent, which I think was massively detrimental to my learning journey. I needed to learn what does it feel like just to go even in a lane. I didn't know what that looked or felt like, because I was like, if I don't win my lane, I'm like losing the game. That's what it felt like. So until I actually learnt, let's actually just miss a bunch of opportunities and then just play how I think, how it lowers my skill level. My learning journey actually was way more comfortable.
So tying it back to Garen, right? We're talking about Garen. One of the things I've noticed in our members who play Garen, because guys, we've got a lot of Garen.
So many Garen players.
Garen is very, very popular. Is Garen really tests your knowledge, not only of what Garen does, but what the other champs in the game do. Like, because Garen's quite simple, right? At the end of the day, he's going to run at you. He's going to use his abilities in a certain way. And just knowing how the enemy is going to respond to that and being prepared for what each enemy ability does is actually really, really important for Garen specifically, because he's so linear in what he does. So that's where I see a lot of the problems. Like you early on in your journey, like knowing what Alawi did, or knowing what like knowing to cleanse the Malphite Q with the Garen Q. Stuff like interactions like that actually were really important, I find, when I watch members play Garen.
Massive, yeah. It completely, you would say one thing and then it's like, oh wow, this matchup is 100 times easier now. Yeah. I need to think about my Q that way, or
learning how to use your W properly.
Yeah,
that's a big one.
Yeah. And passive as well.
Yeah.
But even with using W, you first have to know what the enemy champions do to then use the W to block the key ability. Like, is another thing you and Tim were taking for granted is just the fact that, because we've all laned, right? We just know how a lane works and
how to trade.
Yeah. Just the concept of trading instead of killing. Like like some of our members, Nathan included, it's like you either win the trade and you kill them, or you lose the trade and you die. Was a lot of what I see in Garen players.
Super rigid.
Well, I would say the thing for Garen that, look, I think Garen has clear reference points. That's what I like about Garen. It's very clear when you're strong, right? When you know exactly when you spike. it's clear about what the identity of each ability is. That's my favorite thing about Garen. I know what the W does. It's very, very clear. I use this, I mitigate damage. It's just boom. Okay, E. Okay, it gives me sustained damage, and it's great wave clear. Like I can clearly identify every element of the kit. And for me, learning, because Garen was, my first proper top lane experience journey. Like I've played top in the past, but this is like learning properly top. Garen, I liked it. I had fun with it. I found it enjoyable. And again, I really found the clear reference points to be the biggest help. And that's why we'll come back to it later, but like I struggled with champions that had less clear reference points. So that's why Sett, I think for me, was a lot harder because the reference points in terms of what you want to do with the waves and like when you can fight, when you're strong and when you're weak was way less, like more muddied. Yeah. With Garen, it's like very, very clear. And also one thing I will say about Garen is that the fact that you have really good wave clear makes the fundamentals and wave management and resetting way easier.
Yeah, simplifies it. Yeah,
it just simplifies it. If you don't have wave clear, that amazing wave clear, like Sett's wave clear is quite average, way, especially when you're an Emax Garen. It's like, I put myself in a bit of a shitty situation. I can E the wave. I can just get the wave out. Yep. So I think from a learning journey of like really simplifying the fundamentals and ease of execution in lane, I like it. Now, most people are critical of that. They think, isn't that you're not going to learn the fundamentals properly? Well, top lane is already such a brutally hard role that I think Garen is kind of, yes, it is got that training wheels element, but I think that's so important. That's why I'm just a massive advocate of Garen in general.
Now, the tricky thing that I really struggle with Garen, just for people learning Garen from the get-go, this might just be a me-specific thing because I really like to feel in control of the game. And when I started playing, I couldn't accept reality that I like lose minions. Like I'll just go and just die.
Yeah.
And that's because of like the phase rush really hurt me a lot. Like, cause phase rush, I could be better, but I was just losing every lane. But when I started playing Conqueror, I felt like, wow, I feel like I'm playing a bit of a different champion. So I actually felt I got way more confidence.
But that's phase rush in general, actually. By the way, so even in mid lane, phase rush is not an intuitive rune for people to use because utility is harder to use than damage.
Yeah,
right. Damage, the classic thing, like damage solves all problems. The more damage you have, the easier it is to kind of navigate. But with phase rush, it's like, okay, well, how am I going to proc this? How am I actually going to utilize this? Like you got to. There's a lot more nuance in using phase rush, and I think.
But the thing that sucks about Garen is that some matchups you just have to take phase rush.
True.
So it can be a bit ugly, but I would probably recommend people you should learn how to play Conqueror first.
That's true. I would agree with that. If you can get away with Conqueror in a matchup, you should basically always go Conqueror. Yeah. I agree. I think it simplifies it a lot, especially if you're very new.
I think with the Conqueror phase rush as well, like something that I definitely struggled with at the start, which was a really big turning point for me with Garen early, was the run at them mindset. Do you remember this back in early days? It's like only like the idea of only trading on the enemy champion when they go for a last hit. And just opening when they're already in melee range instead of pressing Q and running at the opponent. Like think about that's what you would intuitively think to do on Garen is to use your Q, gives me movement speed. Yeah. I'm going to run at them and I'm going to silence and spin on their head. That just does not work. Because the enemies can space you, and then if your Q goes on cooldown, all of a sudden you lose all control of the wave, right? So Garen it really does teach that, like punishing last hits mindset and punishing enemies when they go for the wave and not mindlessly trading. Because if you do mindlessly trade on Garen, it's really punishing.
I'll say the one thing about Garen that I think it really forces you to think about is winning the war of attrition. That's what I believe Garen is fundamentally about. Like if you cut all the crap, Garen is about winning the war of attrition. You have no mana. Your passive is like unbelievable for sustain, and your W, it makes you incredibly durable. So just from a laning perspective, if you can understand, even if you're inefficient with your Q and your E, but you know how to win the war of attrition, that is such an amazing skill for winning lane. That's what, in my opinion, that's like one of the main reasons in the lower elo brackets I believe he's so effective, because in order to counter that, you need to be actively thinking about proccing the passive, and you need to have good wave management. Now, if you mess up your wave, or the Garen is intentional about the wave, you can completely run over lanes just off your passive alone. So
you scale like really well.
You feel the significance of good fundamentals with Garen very, very, very clearly.
Like, it feels like sometimes when I remember we were doing 1v1s a lot early days, it felt like sometimes if you use the passive well, there's no counterplay.
Yeah.
Like if you're playing Garen into a bruiser and Garen happens to extend the lane, he just
He's
wins the
auto
war
win.
of attrition.
If you're not intentional about your resets and anything like that versus Garen, you will get punished massively.
It's very punishing.
Anything else about Garen before we move on?
Yeah, so this is probably where my contribution ends. This is I did get to Emerald 1 on a fresh account with Garen. I think I'm going to start expanding to learning the other champs now properly. I did contribute a little bit to these guides, but I'm probably going to be more taking a step back for the rest of this podcast. I'm going to be the moderator now, Curtis and Charlie.
I will say, just closing thoughts on Garen. We do have a free Garen guide available us in our school community. School.com/we will teach you league. Yep. There you go. It's a free 8-hour also Garen guide. It's got all the 1v1s that we were just discussing in the practice dojo. And yeah, it's pretty good. We've had some good feedback. We've had people improve just from that guide. So it's the same guide that's in our Top Lane Academy.
Yep. Renekton. So this was our second champ. Now,
my favorite champ in the game right now.
Charles' favorite champion. You played
Charles
a lot
is
of
the Renekton aficionado.
Now, Curtis, initially, you were shocked that we got into Renekton next.
I brute forced
this. So let's just
Can I sow
here.
the seed? So at the start, the plan was that we were going to do Garen, and then I believe we were going to do either Darius or Mordekaiser next,
classic,
right?
easier top lane champ.
Because they were high win rate, high pick rate, right? And I just threw a massive curveball because on the back end of making the Garen guide, I'd already started playing Renekton and I fell in love with it. I'm like, okay, this champion he's just the quintessential top laner. Like for years and years and years, since the game has been out, this champion has always been present in the game, right? He's so much fun. He's got a very high pick rate, so people love him. And I just wanted to like break all these narratives around Renekton. That was my mindset when approaching this guide because
you like something to prove.
Yeah, exactly. People either love or hate Renekton. That's the kind of mindset, especially people who don't play top lane. That's why as well, I'm going to have to say a lot of different names for Renekton, but Renekton is like the top laner's top laner. You know what I mean? Like everyone else on the map hates you for picking it because if you go behind early, you've ruined the game. Yep. But top laners really have that respect for the mastery of Renekton because, and just to get into the details, like he teaches you everything about lane, trading, wave management, threat assessment. Like he can do everything because he wins so many matchups.
That's what makes him hard, though. He has so many options. You had a good quote today. You said he's the Lee Sin of top lane. Yes. People hate Lee Sin.
He's the Oriana. He's the Oriana of top lane.
They can
as
be
well.
most useless champ in the game or like the best champ in the game.
Yep. If you play them well, there's very little the enemy can do. Yep. But if you play them poorly, it's going to be very
and their
very
skill
bad.
cap is like unbelievably high. Like it's some of the highest skill cap in the game.
Yep.
So it's so funny because what happened? I learned Garen and I was pretty happy with my Garen. I was ready to move on. And then Charles said, "We're going to do Renekton." And I think I played I can't remember how many Renekton games. And I was just like, I don't want to do this. I hate this champion. I can't stand this champion. And I said to Charles, "Look, you love it. You're good at it. You're going to take control of this champion." So for me, Renekton is not really my strength. I understand it. I think if I were to go back in time, I think I would have been okay at Renekton if I had not learnt it second. I don't think it was the champ I was in this like really, I wasn't ready to go into that Renekton journey for me. Like it was too complicated for me. And I actually had way more success with Darius and Mordekaiser and these other champs because for me, they were simpler. A lot simpler. And with Renekton, there was just so much that you need. Okay, to make it a little more, to articulate this clearer, with Renekton, you have so many options because you have complete control over so many lanes. So whether you want to shove and bounce, whether you want to keep pry, whether you want to invade, you want to play to neutrals, you can do so much. And even with your trading and the Fury management, is at least for me wasn't intuitive. I didn't know if I needed to go for the double E, the empowered W for the burst, or the Q for the healing. I couldn't wrap my head around that, and I wasn't ready to get into that complexity. So for me personally, I think I'm really glad that we ended up, or you specifically,
and Tim,
you and Tim,
worked a lot in
you and Tim like took control of the champion. I'm really glad that you guys stood your ground and kept Renekton because I think it is an amazing champion, and I think you're spot on. It is the top laner's champion, and it teaches everything you need to know about the game. And I think that for people joining the program, if you're newer to top lane or maybe you're a newer player, I don't recommend starting Renekton, but I think later on in your journey, once you maybe learn the basics of top through a simpler lens, go to Renekton. I think you have a lot of fun, and I think you'll get a lot out of it because you'll be able to utilize the fundamentals that you've learned through Renekton, you know?
We called him the ender of reviews, right? The ender of reviews. We like the term ender review in the Broken by Concept universe. Tim came up with that, right? the why you learn so much about top because it's very unforgiving.
Very
And
unforgiving.
it's very obvious to see when you lost the game.
There's a lot of level 2 and level 3 end of reviews on Renekton. If you don't get that 2 or 3 wave crash and get the wave good, or you mess up a trade and lose your health, like shout out to Darren. I'm going to throw Darren under the bus. I did a top lane review this morning. Darren is a silver Renekton main. I love Darren. We have some great reviews together. Oftentimes we're ending that review at level 3 because of like a failed 3 wave crash or just losing a trade or something.
So what do you see commonly with Renekton players?
Well, remember with you, Curtis, you kept on Q Fury, like
Empowered Q.
Yeah, because you max
were addicted
Q.
to it.
Yeah.
No, because you max
It's
Q.
intuitive
and
to do that.
intuitively, I'm like, I've got this empowered Q. I'm going to use it. But no, your W does more damage.
It does more damage, exactly.
And then
right.
but that would never. I just couldn't wrap. I wasn't ready to. And I'll be honest. I just had a mental block with that champion. Like
Yeah.
I just, like you said, you either love it or hate it. I had a lot of negative experiences with Renekton, and I
Yeah.
think that I wasn't open minded. So.
I think you have to be very fluid on Renekton. So
Yeah, you do.
a lot of the because Renekton, he has 7 abilities if you think about it, because he's got an empowered version of every basic ability. So you're constantly choosing between 7 abilities. It's quite a lot compared to Garen, who has 2 combat abilities and a shield. Like it's very different, right? So
And Renekton can like always kill someone. With
Yes.
Garen, it's simple: no ignite or
cooldowns
ults.
are very short as well, like
Yeah.
the Q cooldown especially. So okay, so what the main 2 things I see with Renekton players is basically just around ability usage. So either not using the correct empower or just not thinking about the Fury. Like Darren, again to quote Darren's actually made a lot of progress on this, like constantly looking at the Fury, knowing when you're about to get to that empowerment stage, get that
see.
50 Fury, like trading when you're on 40 instead of 50, so to catch the enemies off guard, getting that empowered W, like planning out a combo ahead of time is really important. And the other thing with cooldowns is just not trading without cooldowns as well. So a lot of top laners, like they can trade with just auto attacks. And if you try and trade with auto attacks as Renekton, it can sometimes be okay, but most of the time we want to be trading around our cooldowns, right? Like trade when your E's up. It sounds quite obvious and intuitive, but and then what it actually means is that, and this is something that I know you struggle sometimes with, Nathan, is you can be at a very winning position in lane as Renekton, take a beautiful trade, but then you have to drop 1 or 2 minions because you don't have cooldowns to then win the next trade in 5 seconds, right? And people really struggle with that little period of downtime in
because
lane.
they're just like, I have to get every last hit.
Yeah, they think I'm winning. Like, he's lower, I'm high HP. I'm going to walk up and hit this minion. And then it's like, oh, I actually don't have cooldowns right now. And as obvious as that might sound to some people, once you're in the shit, in the top lane, getting hit by abilities, thinking about the minion wave, like the jungler's coming, like it's so hard. The mental stack explodes. So I think, yeah, internalizing those cooldowns and just embracing that identity that you are the best short trade champion in the game, but you need to trade around your cooldowns. I think that's like what defines a good Renekton player.
And I remember one of the other things that I struggled to wrap my head around was how do you translate a lead with Renekton? And I remember I was tunneled on playing around objectives, but you and Tim had a different way of viewing it. You were thinking, okay, Renekton just wants to be at fights to win fights. So do you want to elaborate on the translation of leads with Renekton?
Yeah, so this is still something that I struggle with, to be honest with you. I think like it's, first of all, with Renekton, when you're in the mid game, we had a rule: don't talk about mid game if you haven't got ahead in the early game. You have to be playing from ahead. So the next step with Renekton in the mid game is like, so how do we push our lead, right? So push and move was what we discovered. So just to put it very simply, you push out your side lane using your strength that you acquired in the early game. You make someone react, like make usually the enemy top laner, catch waves. Then you go create a temporary numbers advantage somewhere else on the map and take a fight. Now, neutral objective is really good for this, right? So initially you're thinking, oh, we're just going to stack dragons or play for all the heralds and stuff. But it's not actually about getting the objective. It's about using the objective as an excuse to go bash their heads in.
Yeah.
And you can use buffs, you can use dragons, you can use like
just
towers,
magnets.
anything. That's why grubs are so good for Renekton as well, because you just want to fight. As soon as you get level 6, you just want to hit people.
But that was so not intuitive to me because when I was under the assumption that Renekton needed to push the pace of the game and stack neutrals, but no, you scale just fine.
You do.
But you're just wanting to fight people with your cooldowns available. You have your ultimate, you have your flash, you just want to kill shit. And I think that was really hard for me to wrestle. Like for some reason I couldn't click with that. It's like, but don't you just want to play for the neutrals? But yeah, but it's less that. It's more just fighting, using your strength to get further ahead.
And Renekton's a 10 CS per minute champion.
Yeah.
I remember whenever Nathan watches me play Renekton, it's like, he's always pointing out.
No way you have that much CS. Yeah,
Yeah, like the games that I win on Renekton that are the cleanest is where I'm 10 CS per minute because I'm constantly attending the side lane first and then going to do something. So it's about finding that balance.
It almost feels like Renekton it's like your ability to have success with Renekton scales with game understanding as well. I feel like with Renekton, it's like the better you are just as a top laner and at the game of League of Legends, the better at Renekton you're going to be. And that's why, again, pros are typically the best Renektons, right? Because they just know how to win the game of League of Legends.
Yeah, Bin. That's all I think of immediately. Is like how Bin uses his Fury, how he does everything. It's just, like you said, just a byproduct of being good at the damn game.
Yeah.
It just Renekton's like the best champ at showing what you've got as a top laner.
I love that.
It's so good. And that's, I think, why I resonated so much with Renekton is my ego, right? When I wanted to play top lane, right? What do I think of when I think of top lane? I think of like Bin, like Zeus, like Nuguri from back in the day, like the Shy, like people who are like dominating top lane, right? That's what Renekton wants to be. That's what every top laner aspires to be.
You're the center of the court.
Yeah, exactly right.
The game revolves around you.
Yeah, exactly. You're like the main character.
You're the main character.
It's terrible
of
to
every
say,
game.
but it's true. And
you are, yeah.
Like, it's just like, I just find that so much fun. And just like getting into the absolute specifics and getting like perfecting levels 1 to 3. If you're the kind of person that really wants to just get good at like a few minutes at a time of the game and breaking it up into chunks and just perfecting it, Renekton's just going to be perfect for you. I think like he's the ultimate getting into the details champ as well, because he just requires that level of precision when trading, especially once you start versing harder matchups. I could talk for another hour on Renekton. Would you like me to, or shall we move on?
Talk a little bit through. I don't know if it's better to explain this with clips, but you started watching a bunch of clips around the 3-wave crash versus 2-wave crash.
Yeah. So when I was trying to learn matchups specifically, so I guess to take it back to the start, I was oftentimes just telling people, and myself included, to just 3-wave crash, because it's such a simple, elegant, replicable way of playing out the early game, right? You use your strengths to force the enemy off the wave, use your beautiful wave clear, crash the 3 waves, get it bouncing back, right? And then you can trim the wave and hold it on your side of a lane, which enables you to take beautiful trades and not die to the jungler. It's really good. It's a really nice cookie cutter way to play out top lane.
I had a lot of success climbing from Platinum to Emerald 1 with that just flat. I don't even really know how to 2-wave crash properly.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think you can just go ahead and do it. But what I was finding when I was researching matchups was that the players I was watching at the highest level weren't doing this. They were being a bit more scrappy, and they were like 2-wave crashing sometimes when they took good trades level 1. And that's where I kind of evolved my understanding of Renekton. So like, yeah, you do need to be very fluid with how you play the waves. Like sometimes, and I found specifically in some tank matchups, the best way to play the war of attrition with Renekton is to just perma-push. Like if I'm versing like an Ornn, for example, I don't actually want to give him the space in lane to go and like punish me on last hits, or potentially like get the wave out and have a bigger wave and hit level up timers before me. I want to hit every single level up timer before my opponent. I want to be keeping my Fury high, which is why I want to be hitting the wave all the time.
That makes sense.
And I want to be threatening just like the enemy and the jungler to come at me. Like I want the enemy top laners to use mana to last hit minions, so eventually they have to base. Like I want to threaten plates.
And this ties into, I think, one of the major challenges with top lane I've found, and I guess, the evolution of my trading, and just to riff on this, is there's so many strategies in top, and they all kind of work. You can do the 3-stack into bounce. You can 3-stack into get a deep ward and stick around. You can, like you said, scrappy trade level 1, level 2, do a 2-stack, and then keep shoving. And then where the complexity really comes into play, it's like Renekton, like you said, you're incentivized to hit the wave because you want to keep your Fury up. When you play to bounce, it's really awkward because you're sitting on no Fury. The wave's coming out to you. They usually got a minion advantage and an XP advantage. So they might ding level 4 before while you're level 3, and it's really awkward.
Yeah.
And so you're almost incentivized to keep shoving, but then you think, well, aren't I vulnerable to jungle? And that's where you got to think, okay, then maybe my strategy has to take into account where the jungler's pathing. If my jungler's pathing from, away from me and their jungler's pathing towards me, then maybe I would opt in for the 3-stack into the bounce because I can't really do anything off that bounce anyway,
Yeah.
So like that's been the biggest challenge, is how do I factor in, how do I balance what I want to do in my 1v1, but also in accordance to my champ and in accordance to the jungler. It's like 3 layers.
Yeah.
And I found the same with Gwen. Because with Gwen, you kind of want to order the wave a lot to keep up your stacks. But you kind of want the long lane.
Yeah.
So it's this weird little interplay between trading, wave management, not dying to ganks, et cetera, et cetera.
And that's perfect, because Gwen and Renekton we both recommend for higher rank players, right? They're not recommended for iron or bronze players, or even silver, to be honest with you, because Garen, Mordekaiser, even a champ like Urgot, I would say, that we'll touch on later, have such clearer identities, and they can just straight up do the same thing with the wave regardless of matchup. But Renekton, yeah, it's constantly about adaptation, like tying it back to like the Orianna and Lee Sin of top lane. Like I'm gonna talk about mid here and make a fool of myself, but as Orianna in some, if you're versing like a Rek'Sai jungle, you probably don't want to be auto attacking the enemy tower and playing up really far.
But this is where this is the challenge, right? Because I don't want to go on too much of a tangent here, but whenever you watch the best players in the world, a lot of the time they're not going to be following a strategy that you can even understand or even pull off. For example, like Chovy, like he'll verse a Rek'Sai and he'll shove, and like he'll just, but he's leaning and he's threat assessment and everything's so good that it doesn't matter.
He knows where the jungler is specifically. So
and he can balance all of that together while CSing 10 CS per minute. And it's like, well, I'm not going to do that. No. And so I think one of the challenges for us has been as well, okay, I'm going to watch this OTP. That's been a big process of ours, is watching the best players in the world play this champion.
Yeah.
Okay, the best OTPs. I need to pass that information through a filter and be like, okay, well, they're doing that, but they're at that level. That doesn't necessarily mean that this is the best strategy for the average player to do to climb. And you got to remember what you need to do on a champion to get from Grandmaster to Challenger or Master to GM is not what is maybe best for someone getting from Gold to Plat or Plat to Emerald. So it's like our job has been to kind of almost transform or filter a lot of information into a more digestible, executable, replicable strategy. And that's been a big challenge.
Yeah. That right there is the hardest part.
Yeah.
Like we could have all played top lane, mechanics maxed, pick up a few champs, gotten a relatively good rank and pumped out a bunch of champ guys. But no, we have to do it through the lens of what will get you from A to B.
Consistent results,
okay, let's use practical examples. So we were doing 1v1s yesterday with Sett, right? And one of the matchups we were doing was, and that's the benefit of Charles being from OS, is because we can actually do 1v1, which has been really helpful. But one of the ones that we did was Sett into Aatrox, right? And so getting specific, there's a strategy with Sett into Aatrox where I could literally zone you from the wave level 1. So I can run at you, punch your head in, level up W level 1, auto, and then I can push you so far back that I stay in XP range, you get zoned, I don't get the gold, but I get the XP, and I deny you three melees, right? But then we had the discussion, well, is a gold Sett really going to do this? Is this replicable? I mean, it is theoretically replicable, but is it fair on us as coaches to believe that a gold Sett, this is the best way that a gold Sett player, is it the best thing for them to do? And we came to the conclusion, no. And so we're trying to find a middle ground. It's like, okay, yeah, you do posture up a level 1, but then you back off, you let them get XP, but it's just easier for the Sett to execute. But that has been the dialogue for all of these champions in all of these matchups, and we're trying to find what's the best, most replicable way to play this out through many different scenarios. That's
why our time for the guides for each in the top lane academy, 3 weeks.
It takes so long.
By the time
minimum.
That's minimum. That's one of the. I've been playing Sett now specifically for the. I would say. I mean, I played all week basically, right? And then even before that, I was playing it the week before, and I feel like we're barely. I'm only just now getting to the point where I'm starting to get the hang of winning games.
I wanted to remake the Renekton guide this week. Genuinely, because I felt like my Renekton level has just like gone through the roof because I'm playing it again for matchups.
But that's the thing, we will. Like the thing in this top lane academy is that like even Garen, right? Like what we've done with Garen is great. I think it's good and it will get results. But like what the Garen guide is going to look like in 4 months from now is going to be different. There's going to be more content because we're changing. We're evolving as top lane coaches as well.
Yeah.
But I think, just tying back to Renekton, I just think that the that whole shoving aspect and the 2-way 3, and managing your Fury is again a layer of complexity that as a Renekton player you're going to have to balance.
Yeah, I mean, just to closing thoughts on that topic. So I had the same thoughts as you when I watch like OTPs, trying to like understand what they're doing, and like at the end of the day, you can just kind of ignore what they're doing as well and just make up just what works. Because at the end of the day, what gets results is going to be the most important thing, and getting like from 95% to 100% usually doesn't make the difference.
I have, this is something that, even though it sounds very amateur, but as a coach and still to this day in mid lane, I'll just say, well, look, this works and that works, but as long as you have intention with what you're doing, that's fine.
And just looking from the outside looking in as well, like at you guys as coaches, that's what well, that's what I personally respect about the coaching is that you guys are okay with saying that. I feel like a lot of other content creators would like go out of the way to kind of like explain the intricacies of this and that and the other, but you guys are just like, no, I've seen this a lot. I know what is useful and what is noise. Stick to what's useful. This is noise.
That is the job of I feel like a coach. It's not to tell them what to do. It's where to direct their attention, because the journey is so fucking noisy.
Yeah.
There's so much shit that you have to pass through, so much noise, so much barriers, and so much noise that you have to just ignore. So our job is to be like, okay, and what the guides are really, again, when I'm making these guides, I'm thinking, how do I make this person learning the game through this champion as easy as possible so that they don't have to have, they barely have to have a quarter of the pain that I went through to play this fucking champ. You know, like especially with Sett, like that's the one that's most fresh for me. It's like, I want this person to know exactly what the identity is, not have to worry about setup, know exactly what the best hypothesis is for all these matchups, boom, boom, know what to do in mid game. You know, it's just such a streamlined journey. That's our job. Our job is to simplify the hell out of that journey.
All right, let's move on to Urgot now. Now Urgot, some notes on him, Charles.
Urgot. Well, I want to start with Urgot here, right? So Urgot,
this is where you started to really.
So this is where I got it.
Blast,
this is where I got into the like. I feel like because while you were doing Renekton, I moved on to Urgot, right?
Yeah.
And so I went deep on Urgot, and I was trying to figure out. So what? Okay, I'm gonna just be very transparent. I started down the complete wrong direction with Urgot. So what I did, I went to the best Urgots in NA and EU. I looked at their gameplay, started studying their gameplay, and I'm like, wow, okay. They're going. Some of them are going like, you know, PTA and
Ignite,
yeah. And they're literally just like killing people at level 1 and like diving off the 3-wave crash and stuff like that. I'm like, okay. Cool. That's a way of playing the champion. And, you know, I'm starting to look, and then I'm like, okay, let's look at it a little bit lower. Let's maybe look at some master tier Urgots and some diamond Urgots and then let's play Urgot myself. And I got to the point where I'm like, I'm just flipping games level 1 with PTA.
Quite literally flipping games level 1.
Right? And I'm like, this cannot be the only way to play Urgot. Surely there's a much more replicable, like, I just don't feel comfortable teaching a gold or a platinum Urgot player this. This is not, I don't believe this is what the champ revolves around. And so I had to like go through hell and back to realize that, okay, what they're doing does work. It is viable, but there is other way more replicable and more structured approaches to Urgot. And we kind of found about in a roundabout way that, okay, Fleet is just way more consistent. It makes way more sense with the champ's identity. You're less tied to like this volatile levels 1 to 3. You still are utilizing your levels 1 to 3, but you don't have to flip the game literally at levels 1 to 3. And then you can minimize beautifully with great wave management, getting to your key spikes, and really solidifying that power curve was the most important thing. And I think you were the one that really highlighted this, was that you're like, Curtis, the champ's just so weak, levels 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then you only get really strong again level 9, really, right? And so like, and then when we created this power curve and this structure, we overlaid this structure to Urgot. It just made the champ feel a trillion times better. Yeah. But learning that, creating that power curve, even though now, obviously in hindsight, it looks simple, was not simple at all. And it filled with a lot of painful experiences.
It's so, like, you basically have to, like, play multiple champ identities within this span of minutes on Urgot.
Yeah.
And what's so good about the power curve and even taking Fleet over PTA, something I love to reference is it keeps you out of trouble. Because just knowing that, like, oh, I'm actually level 4 right now, even if I'm it looks like a winning situation, let's just obey the power curve. Let's be a disciplined player and just hands off the keyboard, relax, like farm the minions, get the wave on your side.
But people don't understand this. Urgot is literally the strongest champ in the game from levels 1 to 3
yes.
to the weakest champ in the game from 4 to 9, 4 to 8.
Yeah. And actually, just to tie it back to why we picked Urgot as well, to go in the academy.
Because Urgot's not a popular champ.
He's not popular, but he does have, I think, if not one of the most popular, highest win rates.
Extremely underrated.
And the
more
reason
people should be playing Urgot. I'm going to start a campaign.
Urgot's great. I love Urgot. But people aren't winning those games in lower ranks on Urgot because they're snowballing from having a great early game. They're winning because Urgot's a late game monster and he split pushes well. So if you take that mentality and then apply that, and then add a sprinkle in a little bit of level 1 into aggression to kind of get you to that cull, which was what we ended up deciding is
3 stack into a cull.
Yep, exactly. That's what we use our early strength for, guys. We're not using our early strength to kill them. We're using our 3 to get a perfect bounce back into cull and then scale.
And freeze, hopefully.
And then, so we're taking what's good about the early game, taking what's good about the late game, and Urgot is just so streamlined. It's just
if you want clear reference points, and you want a very clear cut strategy that you can basically replicate no matter the matchup, that's Urgot. And that's why I think Urgot is really good for teaching fundamentals. You have to double down on wave management. You have to double down on good quality resets. You need to double down on ability usage and mana rationing because you have like no mana. You just go and you have very, very defined power spikes. That's what Urgot's about. And that's what Urgot is really, really good at teaching fundamentals.
Urgot for me is when wave management clicked, finally. That's when I understood how waves worked in top lane. And how to control it, because that was my only focus. I moved away from the Garen and the Renekton
because you can't kill them. How do
I? Yeah,
it's because you can't kill your opponent anymore.
It was fantastic.
Different mindset.
I think that Urgot completely. If I didn't play Urgot, I reckon I might still today like struggle to like figure out how to freeze a wave. Or
it's like the polar opposite of Renekton.
Build waves properly.
Yeah, it is.
Because Renekton, you have all the control in the world. You have unlimited options. And you have unlimited complexity with your trading. Urgot is the least complexity with your trading, basically.
Yeah.
You have very little options. And you're like, you're not a jack of all trades. You do like one thing well, like one or two things well.
Very unique.
Very, very unique, yeah.
To use another member example, we have Murph in the top lane academy. So Murph's been a Urgot main since I think season 8 or 9. Played Urgot exclusively that whole time. He's always been a fan of those streamers you were referencing. I think Urpog is the European guy.
Quant is another one.
Yeah, I think Quant from Nene. And they both run PTA Ignite.
Yep.
Quite aggressive, like serrated Dirk, like very aggressive Urgot setups. Yeah. And he was doing that for ages. And yeah, he switched over to our fleet setup, started respecting the power spike, the power curve, just scaling up, playing like mid game a lot cleaner, like not grouping as much as well, just like actually being a bit more selfish and playing side lane, not because that's another thing. Urgot, he's a bit of a gaslighter, to be honest with you, because he's so strong in the early game, and then you have to play respectfully, and then he's got this amazingly strong ulti in the 5v5. You
can technically team fight.
You can fear 5 people, man. That's pretty cool. But it's a bit of a gaslight. Like you really should be heading to the side lane, making people react, getting the hull breaker. And we called him the T2 Tower Terminator because he obliterates T2 towers like in what, like one wave or less. Yeah. Like you can basically just nuke a T2 tower. And like Murph has had so much success, not only obeying the power curve, but just like going from lane to lane and just scooping up the money. You know what I mean? Like that feeling on Urgot when the enemy top laner attends a fight and you just get to slurp up a tower.
And then you rock up to a team fight in like mid game with 3 items.
Yeah.
And you just 1v9.
I mean, that's what I remember watching clips of you, Nathan. This was what clicked for you as well. Like playing more selfishly as a top laner and not over grouping was when you had those experiences of slurping up those side lane towers and just kind of like ducking and weaving in the mid game away from the enemy top, and then you rock up at the next fight, like Curtis has said, and you've got a whole extra item. Like that mindset of pure economy is not really super intuitive, but once you get it, it's really strong.
Playing the economy game, and you're just being comfortable with like letting your team die and trading and creating pressure.
Yeah,
I find players really, like, even me, I have like a feeling in the game. It's like, okay, I know a fight's gonna happen. Like I feel like I should be there, but I have no flash, so I have to accept reality, and I have to be okay with that, and I need to go do something else.
Just as a bit of a tangent here, away from Urgot, but just from an interesting top lane observation has been, it's just a completely different mindset to mid lane in the sense that you got to be so, I can understand why people think top is like the shittest role sometimes. Like I can see why people think that, like that narrative. I can see why that narrative exists.
The narrative of like it's an island.
It's an island. Yeah, you don't have any impact.
Yeah, it's useless. Like bot lane's where the game's decided.
Yeah, but I can feel. You see that on Reddit all the time, or like YouTube comments. Oh, top's on an island. You have no impact. Top lane is, I would say, just from my experiences, I think it's probably like the best role in the game for teaching the game holistically, because you have to learn you actually have to learn how to impact the map properly.
Yeah.
Through when to group, when to split. If you don't have good fundamentals and you don't know how to read a map, you can be useless or the best champion in the game.
The way I view it is like the other roles in the game, like specifically like support, jungle, AD carry, mid less so, they're about responding to numbers advantages. Top lane, you create numbers advantages. He's the only role in the game really that can reliably, constantly create 4v5s. Because you push out a side, someone reacts to it, go group, you've got a temporary 4v5, you've won the game for your team.
And a lot of top laners beat mid laners.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the key distinction.
That's why as well, I remember you guys are saying this a lot in the learning journey. It's like, holy shit, I'm the fucking strongest champ on the map.
You are the strongest champion on the map. That's such a weird
You're the
thing.
highest level most of the time.
Usually the highest level, you have the most resources, and usually you beat everyone in a 1v1.
Yeah,
the fact
that's
that you
what the
beat
champs
everyone,
designed
that's
to
what the
do.
champs' identities are. So now, not always. There are outliers, of course, and
Yeah.
exceptions, but for the most part, and I think that top lane. I just think top lane is just such an awesome role.
Yeah.
I just want to. It sounds basic.
It's
but
awesome.
I just think it's an awesome role.
It is.
Like
awesome.
it's all on you. You have
Play top lane, guys. Play
Just
top
play
lane.
top,
It's
like,
good fun.
honestly,
If I
it's
could go
so
back,
fun.
I'd be a top laner from the start.
Oh, honestly, it's
But
so
but one
fun.
note on this, Curtis, as well, is people have such a negative view of top lane, I think, because of something that I've got to mention, Nathan. Tanks. Tank top laners. The idea of being just a tank. You're just the opposite of what I view as a top laner.
Let's talk about there's two topics I want to talk, two concepts
Okay.
I want to talk about here. The first one,
Yeah.
actually, before, because I think this will tie into the tank thing, is
Yeah.
Nathan's obsession with neutral objectives and grouping. So top lane teaches you to say no.
Yeah, it does.
Top lane teaches you to say, fuck you to your teammates. I'm going to let you die and I'm going to get all these resources and I'm going to make up the difference later.
Yeah.
I'm going to be the strongest person. I can kill everyone later, but if, it's like Gwen. It's like I get to 3 items and I'm going to kill everyone, or I get whatever it is, whatever the spike is on the champ. Your mindset needs to be 100% on econ and efficiency and getting really, really, really strong. And those details matter. And you got to be willing to say no. You got to be willing to let your team die. You got to be willing to ping people back. And that is ingrained in the role. Now, Nathan, you specifically, has come from more of a utility-oriented champion background, and with jungle especially, it's all about objectives and facilitating,
setting things up,
Playing around teammates.
Yep.
playing around teammates.
Win
And-
condition assessment.
and there is an element of that in top lane. I'm not going to say that doesn't exist, but it's not really the best way. It's not the right mindset for top lane.
No.
It's a different mindset. And this is kind of, just now talking about tanks. We don't have any tanks in our program.
So we initially did have Mundo. We thought Mundo was good, but we removed him.
And I
yeah.
think it's important to talk about this because
Originally, I was going to do Malphite. I started getting clips for a Malphite guide because I was like, oh, it's a nice low elo champion. Malphite, pretty simple. But yeah, it's just that agency, I guess, is the word I would use to describe it. It's like you don't really have control over your counterpart, which I think is one of the most important things in top lane, is you want to always be in the situation where you kind of have the upper hand on your counterpart.
So I think I have a better way of articulating this, Charles, because I see this in mid lane, right?
Okay.
So, in league, in mid game, the mid game is easier, much easier when you get prior on your counterpart. Okay, so if you get prior on your counterpart in the mid game, you have so much control. You have because you're dictating what happens. So if I'm a mid lane, I'm just going to say first from a mid lane perspective. That's why I say if I'm Tristana and I'm versing a Lux and I go into the side lane and I can make this Lux react to waves, she's always on the back foot. If I play well, she has to respond to whatever the hell I do. Whether I shove, she's going to either sack waves or respond to waves at tier 2. Now, as a mid lane, if I'm the Tristana, I have so many options. I can shove and move. I can camp and prevent her from roaming. I can get to the objectives first. I can bait out her TP. I have an infinite amount of possibilities about what I can do. So I'm in the driver's seat. Now, if I'm in the Lux's position, it's not the game is unwinnable, but it really requires me. It's a lot harder. I have less options, and I'm way more tied to my team. I'm way more dependent on my team because if my team get engaged upon while I'm reacting to side, we lose. If we lose the 5v5 or we don't win the 5v5, we lose. Like I can't make picks because I have no control. And a lot of the time you'll find this is why people struggle on control mages is because they have damage. It's like you're playing Xerath or Hui or whatever the hell it might be. I've damage. I can kill anyone, but I can't get onto anyone because no one's coming to me. And I can't get control of the objective because I have to bloody respond to a side lane 24/7. I have no control. Now top lane, tanks are the equivalent of control mages, like those, but it matters less for mids than it does top. Because in mid, as a mage, you're not the one that a lot of the time has to respond to a side lane because the top laners are responding to sides, and top laners are more tied to side lanes in general because you don't really group that well.
You're the goalkeeper. Is the way I put it. Your job, if you're playing a tank into a split pusher, is to goalkeep. You have to guard the T2 tower. So if you're constantly sacking and grouping.
But how much easier is it to be that Camille that has Triforce, Ravenous, and then shoving all the way to tier 2, and the tank's like, oh, I'm just going to sit here and defend the tier 2.
Yeah, it's torture.
It's just torturous. It just feels terrible. I don't actually believe you're learning the role of top. The role of top is to try and get in that power position and be the one with control. And that's the most replicable way to climb in solo queue. Now, that doesn't mean you can't win with Malphite. Doesn't mean you can't win with Shen or any of these
Skarner's had a big run.
Skarner, whatever. But it's a suboptimal way to learn the role.
Yeah. That's what's made me uncomfortable. Because it's not that you don't do damage.
It's not that you can't win. You can team fight.
Yeah, it's not that it's like a meathead champion. It's what you've just said there. Because fundamentally, if you think about it logically, if you're constantly responding to waves, but your main job is to engage, how do you ever engage? You have to sack the wave.
Yeah.
And then what?
If you miss that engage, what happens?
And it's also just inherently coin flippy. You know what I mean? Like, because if
you're hoping your teammates execute correctly.
Well, you're relying on the enemy team to not respect you sacking. But if they just notice that you're not on the side wave and they just spend those few minutes stepping away from the mid wave or something, then a fight won't happen. And then we're not playing the game anymore.
Yeah, and exactly right. And I have nightmares from back in the day playing. I remember I used to play a lot of Maokai top into like a split pusher. And I'm like, God, my team's like, all right, I need to be there for that neutral. But then there's like an echo top splitting my tower. And I'm like, well, I'm either going to
lose-lose.
It's a lose-lose scenario. Yeah. And I just feel like, yes, we can learn. We could teach the game through tanks. We could do that. But again, from learning the role itself, I actually believe that if you learnt the game through the lens of any of these other champions, like let's say a Renekton or a Sett or any of these champions, you would already be able to play a tank easily.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be that hard. It's like, oh, yep, I get it. I know all the top lane fundamentals. I got to play around neutrals. I get it. Like, it would be plug and play. It wouldn't be that complicated. But the other way wouldn't apply. If I learnt the game through Malphite, I wouldn't be able to play Sett or Renekton.
100%.
It wouldn't work the other way around. So that's why it's fundamentally disingenuous for us to recommend playing a tank. You're not learning the role properly. And also what I will say about lower elo, let's say specifically bronze and silver. Look, you probably would get away with things like Malphite pretty easily, right? Because people aren't going to be sophisticated in the side lane, and people aren't going to respect or engage, right? So
yeah,
it probably would work.
A lot of A-ramming.
Yeah, a lot of A-ramming, and Malphite is really good at that.
And then those games as well where you pick it where there's just full AD.
Yeah. Like you will win games, and I want to make it very clear. It's not that you won't win games with it. It's just that we just don't believe it's teaching the top lane that well.
We're not learning much.
Not learning that much.
Yeah.
So yeah, probably as it stands right now, we don't think we're going to be adding top tanks to
for
the
now
program.
anyway.
For
It may
now.
change.
There
Who
might be certain ones that sort of pop up. Maybe like Skarner's been interesting.
Well, Skarner's... But
So I played Skarner. I went on a bit of a journey the last couple of days because I was always losing to Skarner and I'm versing it a lot. It's very, very annoying. So I played a couple of games, but it's the same as what Curtis is talking about. The weird thing about Skarner is I versed a Mundo and I went even in lane or slightly ahead, and then he starts caving my head in the side lane. So it's like there's this mini war between the tanks for which one even wins prior.
But Skarner's interesting because you win a lot of lanes, right?
Yeah,
That's the thing.
Well, they've just nerfed him again, so hopefully he shouldn't be winning lanes by throwing rocks at you. But yeah, we've all been there. We've all Comet Skarner with Qmax throwing the rocks at you. Yeah, it's just annoying. Like I think we should disregard Skarner. Don't even.
Bit of an outlier.
He's not even a tank. Honestly.
We'll see what happens.
He's a mage.
We might be wrong.
Yeah,
maybe he'll stick around. We don't know.
Yeah.
All right, so we're happy with that little tank conversation there. All right, let's move on to Mordekaiser now.
I'll say this was the highlight for me of the entire top lane academy. I love Urgot. love Mordekaiser. I think Mordekaiser, it kind of plays like a mage, right? So like plays more like a mid laner than a top laner. So I clicked with it really easily. I was just smurfing with Mordekaiser, like winning games in Master Tier.
Yeah, you got results pretty much.
I got really insane results. Like I could easily confidently win games in Master Tier with Mordekaiser. Just boom.
It kind of has a mage mindset as well in terms of like just classic scaling up.
Trading off last hits.
Item spikes as well.
Yeah, the way you fight. And what I loved about Mordekaiser and why I would recommend Mordekaiser to anyone playing top lane is because the reference points are so beautiful. Just think about it. You've got very clear spikes, Rylai's. You know exactly what you want to do with waves. right? Mordekaiser doesn't have that whole thing of like, oh, do I want to, shove? No, you want the wave on your side at 6.
Yeah.
Like fact. Like there's no like, it's very, very clear what you want to do with waves. And what I love about Mordekaiser is that there's so many cool things you can do with your R. You can group on neutrals and you can rip out the jungler.
Yeah.
You can isolate like a lot of mid laners and just shred them. There's just so much creativity you can do with the R. And I love that aspect of Mordekaiser. And it felt much more elegant for me to play because you could actually express. It's like it's a combination of like high skill cap, but in a more utility based way. It's not a high skill cap in terms of the way you fight. I think the fighting
decision making,
being
in the right place,
you get rewarded
right
for really good map movement
and knowing your role.
And knowing your role. If you're good at the game, but it's the perfect combination of 3 aspects: simple reference points, ease of execution, but you get rewarded for being good at the game. That's why I love Mordekaiser. It's just a great champion.
Yeah, he's good. He's got some Renekton aspects as well, I will say, in terms of like he's pretty good at trading in the early game. Like he can play that war of attrition as well, which we think is it's just a good way of getting results, right? A lot of people fight all the time. Mordekaiser has inbuilt sustain with his W.
No
mana. The W, actually, we should talk about that because Mordekaiser's W is something that's pretty misunderstood.
You helped me massively with Mordekaiser's W. I was like overusing the heal.
Yeah.
And then you gotta remember the shield is just so much more effective than the heal itself.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think in a lot of fights, I was like tunnel visioning on the heal. But you're saying, I remember you were just saying, Curtis, just don't use it. Just hold it for the shield. And you'll just win. You'll just win so many fights. I was winning way more fights just by optimizing my W usage. And the other advice you gave me as well was really paying attention to the isolated cues. Like I was not giving the isolated cues much credence, not much focus. But then you said, Curtis, like actually focus on landing the isolated cues. It makes a big difference, especially when you are like just really hitting your cues. And I had a blasé mentality towards it at the start. And then when I switched that mindset, I got to land the isolated cues. Boom, my solo kills just went up massively.
Yeah, holding the Q, holding abilities. That's something
Running
that
at people getting the passive.
Yeah, exactly. Like getting those 3 auto attacks before you even throw your first Q is just such a simple way to proc the Rylai's before you get the Q off. And yeah, just like that's like a jungler's mentality. Me and Nathan always talk about that back in the old school jungle guides we did, just holding abilities and the power of overwhelming people's mental stacks. Like Mordekaiser is so good at doing that.
When you get ulted by Mordekaiser, what's your first thought? Dodge. I got to dodge the Q. You got to dodge, and they're just juking themselves.
Imagine just walk forward,
and then you push them into the corner, and then you just.
And what you do is you hold E to the end, so that you run into them, and then they're trying to escape, and they fight, and then you E, you pull them back in. It's so satisfying.
He's very good at teaching ability usage. He is, because the W as well is not super intuitive. Like. Because you can do so many things with it. You can double tap it for healing. That's something that we weren't doing at the start. We had to learn that. Blocking key abilities with the shield. Like saving it till after the realm. So you solo heal someone in the realm without W. Then you pop out of the realm. And then you have a shield on you. It's like, oh, damn.
Or sometimes not even using your E at all in the realm.
Yeah.
And then using it at the end.
Yeah, saving your E. I've done that a lot. Like, that catches people off guard as well. Like... Because people cluster up on you and then you emerge from the realm and imagine you've got all the abilities because you just killed the guy with auto attacks. Like that's realistic. That does happen.
It is. Yep.
Mordekaiser is also one of those champs where you do want to be selfish. Like this is something I would see as well as like low CS Mordekaisers. But you want to group at the fights, right? Because we have to group at neutrals.
That's what the mid game is all about. Mordekaiser.
Yeah.
It's about you're not about split pushing. You're about shoving and moving and getting to neutrals.
Classic push and moves champion. And he's just so rewarding. Like saying no to fights without ults, saying no to fights without ghost sometimes as well. Getting strong.
Yes.
Because he is like so perfect in a lot of ways, doesn't he? He's
like the perfect.
I want to go home and play Mordekaiser.
Yeah, he's like the perfect. Like if you, again, you might say why Mordekaiser over any of the other champs. I just think that Mordekaiser simplifies the journey the most. Even like more than Urgot, I would say. Because I would say with Urgot, you're a little bit more... like you have like more downtime, like where you can't do as much. Whereas Mordekaiser, I think, is consistently kind of strong throughout the majority of the game. Like
you can always kill people with R.
You can always do things. You can always trade like level 3,
a bit more intuitive as well. At the end of the day, like he's just like a fighting game character, right? He's got a couple of bonky abilities.
Yeah,
Urgot's a bit weird. You know, Urgot's got like
a bit weird,
like a toggle, unique. A bit weird stuff about him.
So I think like Mordekaiser simplifies the journey the most. I think Mordekaiser would be my number one recommendation for like Iron, Bronze, Silver. Like I think if you learn the game through Mordekaiser, for those, like you're gonna kill it. You absolutely kill it.
Yeah, love it.
Moving on.
Darius was the first top laner that I played to a relatively high rank.
we were initially going to not do Darius. We had Darius, and then we were not going to do him, and then we did him again.
I don't really remember that. Is that what we did?
Yeah.
We
Can I start with an
bailed out.
interesting thing about Darius?
Okay.
Darius was the champion for me that had the most stark difference between complete failure to complete success. I did a 180 with Darius. I remember I was shooting my brains out. I hated this champion. I was like, oh my God, I have to play this shit champion. And then it was just a few concepts that tied together. It was just E usage, going deep on usage.
E usage. Yeah.
Just really understanding the limits with the bleed. It is a champ that you just got to know your limits. The most brutal thing. And I saw on the Discord, some people sending their OPGG. They say they got 25 games of Darius and I've got like a 20% win rate. Dude, I will one up you. I had like a 10% win rate. And I turned it around and it became probably my second best champ next to Mordekaiser. I was winning again in Master Tier games with Darius. I was playing on my main in like GM lobbies and winning games with it. So Darius for me is that champ where you will inch your ass off because if you don't know your limits, you will go 0-10. But the game, if it clicks, you understand your limit, you know the matchup, boom, you can go 10-0. Just like that.
You're playing on a knife's edge. I think that's why a lot of the time you want to be low HP. That's something that Darius taught me, was that being comfortable with being low, because you have like more kill threat than they do, which is really strange. Like if you do nothing as Darius and you just kind of sit there and like ping pong waves and play a bit normal, you're just gonna suck. And like if you all in at the wrong time, you're gonna die. But it's finding that balance. You know what? I was laughing a bit before because it reminds me of Nathan's Darius journey. And
Wait, so what with Nathan? What happened?
Nathan would always win on the first 3 waves, and then he would try and dive the enemy top laner at level 3.
Oh yeah, dive.
He would die every single time.
Because what I couldn't wrap my brain around is that I didn't kill them when they should have died because I would have misexecuted.
Yeah.
Right? So they have to die. You're meant to die.
Like you rush your E or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I'll not queue on the edge or.
So Darius, you
just do not dive on Darius. I needed to drill that in my brain. Stop trying to dive because he's really bad at diving.
Well, it's because our identity for Darius, he's the Punisher.
Yeah.
Right? And what a lot of people do with Darius, and what we were all doing, we're all guilty of this early in our journey, is we were trying to kill the opponent before the opponent made a mistake.
Yeah. That's exactly where
that's
the Punisher.
That's why he was so hard for us, because we didn't understand that. We were like, they have to die. It's like, well, they only die if they make a mistake.
Yeah, and the margin for error is so high,
Yeah.
or low, actually, versus Darius, right? Again, for the enemy, it's like the enemy only have to overstep by a tiny, tiny bit, and boom, that's a mistake. And then they're dead. And that's why as well, Darius, he thrives in like the long lane. I think that's one of the biggest learnings I had on Darius, is like the power of actually getting the wave on your side of a lane. Because so you can run them down with ghosts. Like that's where you get in situations where, I mean, I had a game last week streaming in the Discord where I'm 90 CS at 10 minutes and the enemy Gwen's 20 CS. Because once you do get the wave on your side,
it's a top cap champ.
It's a top cap champ. Yeah.
Yeah.
You need to learn how to freeze.
Obliterate.
Freezing is where of all the lists, Darius can like do flat out hard freezes.
You can do hard freezes, and also you get insanely rewarded for good matchup understanding.
Yeah.
You can win your lane at level 1, like in a pretty replicable way. Like there was matchups, remember, we looked at where you just ghost on them level 1 with W.
Yeah.
You just run them down and kill them. Like there was crazy shit you can do on Darius that you would have like no idea unless you just really got into the matchups. And also I'll say Darius is like an incredibly rewarding champion for learning and developing Master on, but it's one of the most brutal journeys. So if you're watching this and you're like, oh, I've got a 20% win rate or whatever, own it. That's what it's gonna be like. You're gonna be in the shit. You're gonna be in the mud. But I promise you, it will turn around and you won't look back. You'll be so happy you stuck with it.
Fun champ. I
think it's fun.
I love it. I clicked. Fun, really fun champ.
Also, we initially were going to call him like the king of summoner spells. Ghost is so important. You're a different champ with Ghost. The flash doesn't actually matter that much, I find. It's more the Ghost. Would you guys agree?
I think Flash
both are still useful.
Both are pretty good. Like in team fights, specifically the Flash in lane doesn't mean anything, but in the team fights, I think Q Flash or
that's true.
Even just engaging with Flashy sometimes.
Flash
it's nice.
when you have the stacks is so good. You spread the stacks everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, dude, when you have those team fights on Darius where you stack up 5 bleed stacks on someone and then Q Flash,
there's actually nothing more satisfying.
Oh my lord,
it's the most satisfying feeling in League probably.
No, you're like the closest you can get to a 1v9 champ.
Yeah.
Like I mean, I was getting pentakills when I was playing the Darius guy. Like if you want to get pentakills, play Darius. Like is a pentakill farmer. He's really fun. But yeah, you kind of have to be a bit of a psycho, I reckon, to play Darius. Like, if you're a bit of a slower guy, like playing wave states and stuff like this, yeah, maybe don't play Darius.
He's not like the chess, like cerebral type.
No.
You need to be willing to. He's like the Yasuo of top in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. You have to be willing to just like bomb some lane phases, find your limits.
You gotta love fighting.
Yeah.
You got to love fighting.
Yep.
That's it. You gotta love fighting, and you
Yeah.
gotta love getting in there. It's gonna get dirty, gonna get messy. That's what it's gonna be like.
Yeah. I will also say that he's very polarizing in terms of his matchups. Like, once you get into the details, like there's some matchups where if you play Darius, like into Gwen, for example, like I said, it's just like you just obliterate her in the early game and it's actually quite easy. But you play some matchups where it's a bit more close, like maybe a Sett or something. And then you do have those matchups where it's like, oh, I'm versing Vayne top, or I'm versing Teemo, like this is boring. But that's just part of the journey. And I think expectations with Darius as well, based on matchup, was something that, yeah, I had to come to terms with.
100%.
All right, next up is Gwen. Gwen.
So you're a bit of a Gwen. You were a big Gwen player, Charles. You definitely put a lot of work into this guide.
I grinded Gwen.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on Gwen, Charles? How do you interpret Gwen?
Yeah, so Gwen, we call her the reactive raid boss. So Gwen is a bit of that raid boss. Like it at a high level, Gwen is a scaling champion. And I think this was the first true scaling champion that we did in top lane. Like not so much as like a Kayle or a Cassidy, but you do have that factor where if you hit 3 items and you hit level 16, like you're going to one-shot people. And she is like a raid boss in that sense. But she's also a bit strange. She's one of the hardest champs we have because of her mechanical intensity and because she kind of is a bit of a blank canvas in a lot of ways. Like she has good reference points, but she's also capable of a lot because you want to scale, but your laning phase isn't that bad. You're still good at punishing last hits and stuff like that. But I would say that Gwen is basically just like a classic damage dealer at the end of the day. She doesn't do a whole lot utility wise. You need to be very selfish. You need to just have high farm and do a lot of damage. It's hard to really put a pin on like what Gwen teaches you.
Yeah, Gwen is a bit of a...
She's a bit of an AP Renekton that scales in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It's very strange.
Gwen really was hard for me because you have this idea that you scale, but there's so much trading power in the early lane if you're good at trading. Like it rewards. I think actually, I think with the early game, you got to double down on trading. Like I think the champ has such a high skill cap when it comes to trading. There's so much you can do. And I think that if you love the details of trading and what you love about top is trading, Gwen is a really good choice because you get rewarded for great trading and you can just mechanically outplay people. It's a mechanics max champ. If you can be behind, you can be in a bad situation and just win fights because you land all your R's, you space, use your W to block a key ability, use your E to dodge an ability, and then you get the empowered Q, and then like you just win. So I just feel as though Gwen has that Renekton-esque aspect of there's a lot you can do because of the skill cap of the trading and the complexity there. But I think that you've got that X factor with the 3 items. The one ability with Gwen that I think is one of the most unique abilities in the game is the W. The W is just so goddamn nuanced and so complicated. And it's an ability that scales with game understanding. And if you're a great top laner, you're probably actually going to just be good at Gwen because you understand how to get value out of the W. The W for me just completely bamboozled me. And so I think like if you're going to go down the Gwen journey, you need to spend a lot of time with your W. And like I would like focus on my W usage in key fights.
So W usage is like the secret source of that champ.
And that's what Charlie's big criticism of my fighting when he was watching me play is like, I'm just not using the W well. I'm just not. Yeah. So what you want to do is like Charlie kept saying, you want to sit on the edge. So you want to like go in, you want to use your W, you kind of sit on the edge. They can't hit you. Yeah. And so there's this balance between you're doing damage, but they can't damage you. So you're like a space creator, but you also need to get on top of them to kill them. So like I couldn't mentally kind of visualize that. And so yeah, that's something that you were quite good at. I think we had the opposite problem where I think you were really good in mid game and you would just win games getting to mid game. But and you would have a sloppy early game. I would have a great early game, but I couldn't win in mid game, which that's just the reality of like people's strengths and weaknesses. But
I think I played 50 Gwen games before I started using W to trade. Like I would just use W for stats.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I was watching some VODs and I see people, playing on the edge of the W, like you were saying, where you can hit them and they can't hit you. And it's like, once that clicks in your brain, it's like, wow, this ability is insane. It's like very, very, very good ability.
And landing R's, that was a big one. You pushed.
Yeah, I thought the R was pretty intuitive from the get-go, but it's, again, just that holding the ability and just being a bit more... the time between the casts is what a lot of people get caught off guard by. You can wait, like, I think 6 seconds.
Yeah, that was not intuitive to me.
Yeah.
I thought you had to rush it. Like,
No.
I think the timer was really slow, but it's really long.
Yes.
So you can just sit there and hold it. You press
Plenty
one,
of time,
hold,
yeah.
hold,
And
go
people try
again.
and dodge and stuff.
Yeah.
Yep. It's
Yep,
really good.
exactly
Just
right.
auto people to death, dodge, then R them. I would say that the two things, if I isolate two things that Gwen teaches you, number one is really an obvious one, but you just punishing last hits in lane, because one of the big reference points we have is that when the enemy goes for a last hit, just cue them in the face. And that works for a lot of players. I had a Justice, one of our members, he's gone from Iron to, he's been Bronze at the moment. He's a Gwen main. And yeah, he's actually got really good at that. And just classic 3-wave stack every game. Punish them on last hits. It's quite simple. I think that Gwen does have that bit of like a low floor and a high ceiling.
Yeah, I would
because
agree.
she's not very punishing because of her scaling factor. But there is a lot of that nuance.
And
once
you can
get to
just
the higher
smash. You can just in a team fight just press your R, and even
yeah.
if you're gonna do bulk damage.
I think that's why I was having success in team fights. I was just not overthinking it. Just bash the
Right.
buttons in a direction.
I will say though, the team fighting was the hardest aspect for me with Gwen. That was what I was chalking at. You and Tim were quite good at it. I couldn't wrap my head around what do I do? Do I front to back? Do I get on the back line? And I think you helped me a lot by saying you just got to flank. You got to get on the back line. But
you want to arrive late. Like I was actually talking about that this morning in the reviews. Is Gwen is not like an engaged champion. She actually does not want to be there as the engage happens. That's why I'll get to my second point, which is split pushing. You actually always want to arrive late, whether you're flanking after the fight happens or creating threat, or you're just straight up TPing into a fight once the enemies are past the point of no return. Like
it actually kind of plays like an assassin.
you're a cleanup champ.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are. Gwen's a really good cleanup
Again,
champ.
not what I thought, but it actually is. So
And she's really, really good at it because you have Ghost and you have so much damage that once the enemies have wasted all their spells, you just dash around killing them all.
Yep.
It's really good. But yeah, Gwen I think is perfect for teaching that like split push selfish mentality. Just that idea of being so comfortable with your team dying. Like it's a weird thing.
Yeah.
You go from one extreme to another, right? So what a lot of people feel, which I think Nathan might feel a little bit, is if you're in the side lane, a fight happens, the enemy top laner attends it, and your team dies, you feel bad. But if I'm playing Gwen, and that happens, and the fight goes poorly, but I get a T2 tower, I feel good. Like, that's what Gwen teaches you. It teaches you to embrace, like, just that gold acquisition mindset, like, just farming towers, and then, yeah, you're just going to rock up later in the game on 3 items and just, like, execute.
yep, 100%.
Would you say that Gwen's the best scaling champ of our list so far?
Yeah, I reckon she is. I think she's the strongest scaling champ. Maybe Garen in some
Garen's
games
close.
can do pretty well. I mean, they all have their strengths. I would say just across the board, yes, Gwen is going to be one of the best 6-item champs in the game. Yeah, in both the side lane and in the 5v5.
You also said that the Gwen guide you think was the most streamlined guide, Giles.
Yeah, so this
With
was
Tim.
because we launched the product, the program, sorry, early in June. And I got to see people play Gwen before making the guide, and I got to like watch the members and see, oh, this is what they're struggling with, this is what they're good at, bad at.
It was structured way better. I feel like the Gwen guide. Yeah.
I mean, just to like say what it basically was, like we just had a very, very big emphasis on showing full laning sequences, showing what a full lane looks like. I think we have like 10 examples, like what a full lane looks like. How to use the abilities, how to approach the waves, how to approach the trading, the matchups, all that stuff. And then just full mid-game sequences, like, because that's sort of the biggest questions that I get every day in Top Lane Academy is like, when do I group and when do I split? It's like, just look, we've got examples of what to do, key factors, saying no.
I think me and Tim also reviewed a shit ton of team fights.
Yeah.
In the guide as well. Rather than
They're the 3 things: laning phase, when to group, when to split, and how to play team.
how to
fights.
play team fights.
Like that's it. Just cut the bullshit. That's how you play Gwen, you know. And I think that's why the guide was so streamlined. I also think that I'm just recalling my Gwen journey now. I would ARAM a lot. Do you remember this, Nathan?
I remember you and Tim were on Discord together and you were laughing. You look at your VOD and Tim was just hysterically laughing at you just being mid in just looking around.
And this
mid.
is what Tim didn't. Tim was so good. I feel like at Gwen, like he was.
Yeah, Tim was good.
Mid game, his mid game Gwen, like he was so smart. He just knew how to get in good locations. Like I feel like your fighting was like if not better than Tim, but he would just be in way better.
Yeah, he would put himself in
locations.
good flanks all the time.
All the time,
Like
yeah.
creating space is something that's pretty unintuitive, but Tim was really good at it. And yeah, just always like that idea of, because you are split pushing, you're in the side lane, it's like an organic flank. You know what I mean? You're just naturally not on the mid wave. But in my early games of Gwen, I would always just find myself just staring at the enemy team on mid wave, just like, hey guys. And then Gwen sucks at that. Gwen's not a mage.
No.
Like, Gwen can't do anything. She can't engage, and you want the enemies coming into you, right? So, yeah.
So basically, you're saying that if you're in a situation where you're hovering or ARAMing around mid, you're probably in the wrong position.
You probably messed up.
Yeah, if you're like in Pokemon, right, and like your eyes lock with another trainer in the mid lane and they just look at you, like you probably made a mistake. Like you don't want to be getting seen
Gwen
as
is
Gwen.
the most. I think about versing Gwen. Very low threat when I see Gwen. When I don't see Gwen, there's the scariest champion in the game. Like I'm spam pinging like the fog of like where Gwen could flank me from. Like really good Gwen players.
The only time you want to show is if
Terrifying.
you're hitting a wave or hitting a tower.
That's a great principle.
Yeah, you want to be in the grass in Pokemon, not being a trainer staring at someone.
All right, Curtis. Now, the most recent champion that you've been specializing in going through the ringer with, Sett. Sett top. Now,
Yeah, I'm like, what's it called? You know, Rocky at like the final rounds. That's me.
That's how you feel you're at
That's
now.
how I feel with. That's how I feel with Sett after
Sett.
learning him. It's like,
Oh yeah,
absolutely
you're
just
bleeding.
bleeding. I'm
You got a really
bruised.
like, swollen eye.
Yeah,
and-
I'm just completely to the. I got pushed to my limit with Sett. I think I got. I would say I'm quite a stubborn individual when it comes to things with League, and I got pushed to the extreme. And Sett really put me in situations where I had to dig deep about my understanding of the game. And I was talking to Nathan before you got here, Charlie, about how like I feel like I've become a better League of Legends player and top laner through Sett. It's really forced me to understand aspects of the game that are so uncomfortable and so unintuitive to me. Sett, to really just summarize Sett, he's a fighter, he's a stat checker, and he's like Darius 2.0. But the thing with Darius is that you've got way clearer reference points in terms of like what you want to do with waves and kind of what you're looking for in trades. So with Darius, it's like I know what the trade exactly looks like. But with Sett, there's so much nuance, and you got to get messy, you got to get dirty, and the trading patterns with the W is so unintuitive. Like the idea that you actively have to take damage to charge up your grit, and then W get low, and then turn the fight with this huge shield and true damage. It's just like, what the fuck? What is this?
Every single aspect of Sett's kit is crazy.
Yeah.
He does 2 autos instead of 1.
Yeah, the double punch.
His Q is the same thing. The W is a shield, but I feel like the shield is a bit of a gaslight. It's more about the damage. The E, the range on it and the way it stuns or doesn't stun is so odd. I mean, you didn't even understand what the E did until very recently.
yeah.
The ulti is like, you can do so many things with it. You can throw the front line into the back line. You can insect people with it. Like, I'll just be transparent about it. I gave up on Sett. I gave up. Sett pushed you to your limits. Sett pushed me past my limits. I gave up. This champion, I attempted it, and I just couldn't grasp the identity. And I think that it's weird because we've put the champion in the academy because he does get results. It's consistently wins games in lower
Stats
ranks.
don't lie.
Stats don't lie. Exactly right.
Well,
And
we found that that's different though with high elo and low elo.
Yeah.
The way Sett, because even Tim, he actually played a game, he said, on a platinum Smurf, right? And he said it was just like completely different. Like you just walk up and eat people because they just don't tether well, and they don't respect your range. Because Sett, the big thing is that your Q gives movement speed. So the threat of you being able to sprint at someone and rip them in,
people don't respect that.
People
do
don't
they?
respect that, and I think that Sett is a completely different champion in gold than it is in diamond. It's just a different champion, and so I think for me, I was learning it in like diamond and master games, so it was hard. It was really really hard, and so I think Sett teaches you matchups. You got to know your matchups. You got to know your limits. If you're afraid of, you want like a general game plan that you can plug and play like an Urgot or like a Mordekaiser or like, one of these other jams, it's not for you. It's complete opposite of that. Every matchup will be different. Some of them you go W start, some E start. Some you're going to 3-stack tempo reset. Some you're going to get shoved in. Some you're going to 2-stack and get messy. It's details, which is not what you would expect when you think of the champ of Sett, but that's what it is. And because if you don't get a lead in the early lane, you're in trouble. You got to get a lead. And what I will say with Sett is that there's never a point where it's like, yay, I got this item. It changes everything. It's like, you're kind of just, yeah, sure, Strikebreaker feels nice, but like, there's no definitive, like, I get Rylai's and Mordekaiser, yes, or I get 2 items on Garen, fuck yeah. There's none of that. Like, there's no, or 3 items on Gwen. There's none of that. And the team fighting is it's so easy to get kited. So you got to be super, super patient, super intentional with your positioning. And it's one of those champs where if you're patient and poised and you know how to use the R properly, you can have insane impact, but you can also be dead useless. So I would just say overall Sett has been a very painful experience, but now that I'm on the other side of it, looking back, I think if I had help with matchups or I knew the matchups, and if I knew what setup to go and I just cut the crap, it would have been so much easier. But I had no idea. So I had to learn from scratch. So, yeah, very tough journey for me.
You talking about some of the spells, you sort of went through a bit of a journey rotating through them all. Where did you sort of get to with Ignite, Ghost, TP?
Yeah, I mean, like I did that same process, we're talking about with all the other OTPs. I went to the best Sett players in the world and I looked at what they were doing and I kind of got gaslit a little bit because the way they were playing it, I don't think was overly the best way. Because you look at Whippo, right? Whippo plays the champ completely different to Auto Clytus, who plays it completely different to like the average master tier Korean Sett player, who plays it different to the, his name's Genshin or something, the EU guy. They all played different. So I'm like, well, if you've got 5 high elo Sett mains and they're all doing something different and they're all interpreting the matchup different, well, fuck me. What am I gonna do? So I had to go through one by one and try all these styles, and I realized that it's a mix. My interpretation of teaching the champ is a mixed match of both. Yeah. Some matchups you are going to go Ignite, sometimes you're going to go TP. But I simplified the hell out of it with runes, and I went down the more like, European route. European sets tend to be a little bit more straightforward with their runes. A lot of like NA sets like to go like PTA and Grasp and all this weird stuff and weird builds.
There's some weird stuff with Heartsteel Sett. I was Tim was telling me about, like mathematically correct Sett or something.
Yeah, there's some weird shit. But you just don't need. I just had to filter out what was noise and what was actually impactful, and I realized there was a shit ton of noise with Sett.
It's interesting that I wasn't able to help with that with Sett, but with Renekton I was. Like with Renekton, there's a lot of weird stuff on Renekton, like PTA Ignite, like E start on Renekton, all this stuff. But I was able to just basically say, hey, just you can run Conqueror TP in every matchup and just find a way, sort of thing. It's not going to be the best.
But I think you enjoyed Renekton though as a champion.
Yeah.
You just didn't like Sett, and I was vice versa. I didn't like Renekton.
Well, I didn't mind the idea of playing Sett. I just got frustrated with the idea of playing Sett in a way that was teachable. Yeah. I could have played Sett and got results. That would have been fine. I could scrap, hit some people, like win some matchups and stuff, but it wasn't replicable. Yeah. No, but maybe that was what I should have embraced, is that no 2 games look the same on Sett. Yeah. It's just purely matchup based, and I guess I wasn't able to.
And that was so we've actually approached the guide very differently for Sett comparatively to other guides. A lot of the other guides we've had like more like, I guess, reference points, I guess, and
following a power curve.
Sett, I've just said I'm throwing it out of the window. I'm teaching the champ through matchups and through understanding the matchups, and that's been I believe a much better way for Sett specifically.
I think that on the topic of matchups, right? So you can technically do that level of optimization for every champ in the game. So there's some matchups on Renekton where you want a 2-wave crash versus 3-wave crash. Some games on Renekton where you want to push, some games where you want to play the bounce back. But the thing about Renekton is, if you do play the 3-stack into bounce back into freeze, that will always work. Yeah. It just might not be the best.
Right.
But with Sett, it's like you actually have to do
the best, kind of. Borderline the best strategy.
And it's the same with Urgot. Like if I'm playing Urgot into like a tank or something, I probably can perma push if I really want to. But we found out that it's just easier to understand the champion if you do the same thing every game. Right?
Sett just wasn't forgiving like that. There was no general...
Yes.
You will get punished for that. Like, in a lot of matchups, like, for example, I said, all right, I'm going to try this really conservative strategy into a GP.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, I'm just even at level 5, and then I just can't play the lane anymore.
Yeah.
Or like I just didn't utilize my levels 1 to 5 properly, and then post 6 I couldn't play the lane anymore. And then I looked at all these other Sett players, and they're just running at them and killing on level 4. And if I don't take that window and I don't get that lead pre-6, I'm out of the lane. It's unplayable. It's literally like, if the GP is competent, unplayable past that point. And so like, but other champs don't have that. You know, a lot of the
Yeah.
other champs in the TLA didn't have that.
Well, I think this is something as well that we've kind of figured out intuitively is that it sounds so obvious again, but you want to be ahead when you play League. So why would you not implement a strategy to get ahead?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I mean, there's no other way to say that. Like the game in the mid game, you're not playing the game if you're behind in the mid game as a top laner.
No.
You're not playing the game. So it's our job to find you guys ways to win the game in the early game. So you're in the mid game, you can have the driver's seat mentality and go from there, right?
Yep, 100%. Because a lot of the kits lack utility. That's just as a fact. A lot of the kits lack Gwen, we have, you know, barely any utility. Garen, Darius, like think about all these. Like there's not much utility here in these champions.
This is the price you pay for being the strongest champ in the game. You know, like
that's
imagine if top laners
Dueling
also
power.
had the ability to, you know, just
The
gap
AoE
close
stuff.
or, you know,
Yeah, that's
like-
when you turn into Skarner. You're winning lane and you can engage
right.
fights and everything. That's
and then
terrible.
Riot will hit you with the nerf hammer.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that's just the, you know, the nature of top, I guess.
Yeah.
And Sett. Would you say that Sett? Charles used the word with Renekton like a top lanes.
The top lane is top
A
laner.
top laner's top laner. Do you think Sett sort of fits in that category? Where would you sort of categorize Sett?
I think Sett,
a-
it's like
If you had an MLA champion, what could you compare it to?
It's just like you gotta love fighting. I can't really compare it to anything else I've ever played. It's just like you gotta love fighting. If you love brawling, you love getting in the action.
I've got one, Nathan. I think Graves jungle. A little bit. Graves
You
is
have a
like
lot of options. You're not really weak at
every
any points.
game is
Yeah,
different for Graves
that's right.
as well.
Every
Sometimes
game's
you're level
different.
2 invading,
Yeah.
sometimes you're full clearing.
Yeah, you're not
sometimes-
really weak at any point. You can always kind of do something. That's right.
Maybe even like a Nidalee as well. You always want to just kind of fight people as those champions.
You can't be afraid of fighting, and you gotta love fighting. You gotta love getting low. You gotta love just like getting in people's faces.
Yeah.
That's it. You gotta love punching heads in.
And that's the other thing as well. Like just the one last thing on Sett is like, you said it was so different in like Diamond Master to lower elos. It's that catching them off guard mindset.
Yeah.
That just doesn't really exist as much once you get into the higher ranks. But that's why Sett wins so many games in lower ranks, is because he just does a disgusting amount of damage. Like
it's the most
amount of
damage in the
clips
game.
Curtis has showed me where the Sett W one shot
I
someone.
literally had a VOD yesterday where I did 2.3k true damage to a Garen. He just got wiped off the face of the planet. Think about that. You rock up to a fight, 2.3 thousand true damage. Like the damage numbers
Broken by concept.
on Sett are
It's true damage as well.
true. It's the most damage in the game, I think.
If
Think
you,
about it.
if you chain it with E as well, they can't move.
They're coming.
So-
I've had fights that you've seen me play games with Sett where I'm like 1 in like 9.
Yeah.
And I rock up to a team fight, I get a fully charged W, and I one shot someone
Yeah, it's crazy.
in mid game.
It's such like a hit or miss, champ. For me in team fights, it was like you either run up, you get kited and you die, or you rock up to the fight and you drop a nuke on the opposing team. Like,
No, that's why I called the Sett's mid game the one shot wonder.
yeah.
He's the one pump wonder.
the
that's
one pump
it.
wonder. Yeah,
There's one
exactly.
pump
You got
and
one
you're done.
ability.
If you miss that W,
Yeah,
let's move on.
That means if you get a fight where you can ulti your tank into the back line, you eat them together, and you punch them in the face with
You won.
W, you win the game.
win the
and
game.
the dopamine
Yeah.
is just like, but I think I did that once on my Sett journey. Like, you got to start doing
They're
that
like the
consistently.
best gem in the game for one combo.
Yeah.
And then if you hit that combo, you win the game. You miss that combo, you're useless.
Yeah.
Sett the one pump wonder.
Yeah, that's right. One pump, done.
All right, let's move on to... So that's all the champs that we've done. The Sett guide, if you're joining the Top Lane Academy in the next week, Sett guide won't be done just
Yep,
yet. That's
just finishing that
last
up.
one. Let's talk about Camille Jax Fiora now. So these are champs that we're going to be exploring. Charles, you have experience on some of I think all of them, right?
Yep. Play them all.
So navigating these, what do you want to discuss about these? Well, okay, firstly, why did we decide to add these?
Because video games are for fun, and these champions are fun.
Yeah.
To put it simply,
Yeah.
I love these champions. I think that if you're a top laner, at the end of the day, later on in your journey, you probably want to play one of these champions, or at least have a go. Like, they're pretty sexy, they're pretty cool champions. Like, and I want to find ways to make them a bit simpler. You know, I don't think they're as hard as people necessarily make them out to be either. I think that a lot of people have this mentality that like you need to be like a 16-year-old kid to play Fiora with good mechanics. So you like. Yeah, really embrace that mindset. But I've played a game of Fiora recently with Tim, especially on his YouTube channel, where I have terrible mechanics, but like you just have good fundamentals and you can still win games on Fiora. So I want to break down narratives again, kind of like the Renekton mentality. So yeah, they're fun, and I want to find ways to make them a bit easier. People think they're good champions. People like them. They have high play rates.
And I think that when we decided to get rid of Mundo, adding these champs to the program, we just sort of felt right. Just taking control of the game, snowballing.
Yep.
It just fits our criteria with the way that we're sort of teaching top lane. We sort of really what the TLA is about is like, how do I get a lead and how do I win a game?
They can solve problems. Right?
Yes.
They can win lane if you use your abilities well, all three of them. They're very set ways they want to play the game. I think they're actually pretty clear reference points, all three of them. Like
Okay.
they all thrive in the side lane.
Yep.
They all have really, really good item spikes on like 1 or 2 items. They have pretty decent like power curves, like the Jax power curve, to use as an example. Incredibly strong level 1 with his E. Dips a bit. And then once you start getting to that level 6 timer and you have like the 3rd hit passive and then even post Triforce, you become a massive raid boss. And yeah, these champions, they'll get results, is what I think as well. We're not just going to put them in there because they're fun.
That's what I think as well. I think if we teach them well, I think they will genuinely get results. And I think the thing that I'm looking forward to with these champions is that they scale.
Yeah.
The problem with Sett and the biggest challenge with those sorts of champs is that they don't scale that well. And I feel like that is a bit of a burden sometimes. And I just feel like having that like you mentioned it with Gwen. It's like, okay, I might mess up a little bit, but I've always got the X factor.
Yeah.
I could get to 3 items on Camille, and I'm gonna be a problem.
It's very comfortable to have that in the back of your mind
Very
to play the
comfortable,
game. That's why I've had a lot of success with Garen.
Yeah.
Is because I can always fall back on that. Like, again, I struggle with a lot of matchups, especially when I take phase rush, but I just sit back and say, okay, cool, I can just sort of scale. And there's the critical point where you just know you can push waves, I don't have to interact, and I can just win the game.
They're quite forgiving, yeah.
But I'm also glad that we've done these games last, because I feel like we've gotten better at teaching the top as a skill. And I think we've learned a lot trying to teach the champions so far. I think it's very fitting that we're doing these last, because I think if we started with these, it would have been an absolute disaster.
Oh, absolutely.
So I'm really glad the way we've done this program so far. And I've learned a lot. I feel like every guide we've done, it's just getting better and better and better. You know, and like this, the Gwen guide is obviously really, really good. And I think this Sett guide is going to be super practical. And then I think, you know, we have so much now prior knowledge to draw upon to make these guides.
Yeah, definitely. And hopefully these last couple of champions, well, they might not be the last champions, but at least the next 3 that we do will be like the encapsulation of that knowledge.
Yeah.
So now talking about a bit of a roadmap, I guess, for the Top Lane Academy. So we're going to be working on, obviously, the guides for these champions, but also the matchups that you just completed, the Renekton matchups. You know, the matchups are going to take a lot of work. There's a lot of champions to cover for each of these champions. But people might be asking, are you going to be adding more champs after this? We're definitely going to go probably a bit more deep into the matchups and also the fundamentals of top lane.
So there's basically 3 things we're going to do, right? We're going to finish off all the guides. Then we're going to add sophisticated matchup breakdowns for every champion, right? So you can have all the matchups broken down for you for every champion in the program. And then the 3rd layer is the fundamentals, which we're going to be working on. And so fleshing out all the fundamentals, the top lane fundamentals. So hopefully over the next few months, I don't know what the exact timeline is. I don't know how long it's going to take. Over the next few months, we should have a complete, all the fundamentals, all the matchup guides, all the champ guides done and dusted. And then we're just in the process of adding bonus content, you know, maybe redoing a few things on some of the guides and just kind of maintenance and making sure everything is exactly what it should be.
Yeah, and just updating stuff to
Updating
keep it relevant patch by patch. But yeah, with the matchups, because one of the problems I want to solve that a lot of clients have is they load up into a game, they see the matchup, they're like, oh, I've never played this matchup before. What do I do? So I just want to solve that problem.
Where do I even start?
Where do I start? Yeah. Like the matchup guides I've made so far for Renekton, I've made 25. So we're going to, ideally, I think we're going to do the top 25 matchups for each champion. So you guys do the math. That's a lot of goddamn matchup guides if we're doing like 10 champs in the academy, right? It's a lot of work.
We think it's valuable, though. Extremely
Absolutely.
valuable.
I think it's so important.
I think it's one of
Top
the
lane
most
is just a
important
matchup role. Like, you need to have matchup understanding. So we're going to have that really in-depth stuff where we provide some VODs and like break down what to do level by level, which I've done so far for Renekton. But also, I just want to give people a snapshot. So like the plan is like I've got these little 60-second videos for people to watch in a load screen, because like that's what I want as a user. Just trying to think of it from the member's perspective. Like, what do I want? I want to know, as I'm loading into the game, what do I do with the wave level 1? What does a good trade and a bad trade look like? Just like really simple stuff, so that just offering them a hypothesis that they can test. Because then it avoids that whole bashing their head against the wall thing where it's like, oh, I'm rocking up into a Lowy and I got hit by her E. Didn't know she had that. Like, you know what I mean? Like
15, get me out.
We just want to streamline your learning and make it more fun, you know? Just, yeah.
100%. I would say that's the most miserable part of top lane. Loading into the game, not having any clue about the matchup. Then, all right,
I burst into Neferi this morning. I was playing Renekton into Neferi. And the Neferi had Comet. I got hit by both of the Qs, level 1, because I didn't know that they could fire 2 at once. And I'm just half HP. And it's like, oh, that's my learning.
And then imagine if you just had something that said, watch out for the Qs. This is the Q cooldown. You know, and at least like you don't have to have an end of review level mistake level 1.
Yeah,
you can
exactly.
avoid those really, really basic.
Couple of reference points. Yeah,
couple of basic reference points goes a long way.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's a big part of the painful process of picking up a champ and understanding the matchups, is because you make that end of review mistake, you just lose the lane, and then I have to sit through this 30-minute game, which is pain, and then like, okay, now I know what to do next game, but I'm stuck in this game.
Yeah. But I think part of top lane, dude, it's about embracing that. Like,
you do.
If you're a top laner, like you're used to a brutal life.
You
can
see the pain in their eyes as a top laner.
I'm getting some grey hairs from when I started learning top lane. Like, no joke. Like, it's actually happening.
You can see. You just know a top laner. You look at them, you see the pain, the suffering they've had. All the hours.
1,000-yard stare when you've just died for the 3rd time and you know you have to sit there.
All the waves frozen and you just look at it. I can't fix this wave. I'm just going to run around the map now.
Yeah.
It's really a character building role, isn't it?
100%, yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap up this episode. Reminder, Top Lane Academy is now out. If you're watching this episode, there's a link in the description. We'll probably have as a pinned comment as well. It's $15 a month. Join up. We've got the Discord. We've got the website.
Weekly coaching sessions with me and Tim.
You and Tim, we do some weekly coaching sessions, get your games reviewed, talk with other members, going through the learning process as well with you. Any final comments here? Again, you're going to be seeing more of Charles on this podcast, talking about our journey for top lane continuing, and also when AD carry and support, we get rolling with those.
I think it's a great episode. I think covered a lot.
Yeah, if you want to give me feedback on my performance on the podcast, just join the program and let me know.
And what was I going to say? And this has really been a snapshot of what we've been in the lab the last 4 months.
Yep.
You know, if it's been 4 months, it feels like it's been like a year or something.
It does. It's always so surprising.
But it's not that long. We've come a long way in 4 months.
It's been very rewarding. Like, doing this from scratch, it's been such an experience, honestly.
Yeah.
Just learning this role and like doing it properly.
Yeah, learning it properly. I think that's the key.
And like collaborating on it. It's been
learning it in a way that's actually replicable. We're not just mechanics maxing, because we could have easily just gone into these lanes, mechanics maxing. Here we go. But that's not.
Just tell people to play better. Just like dodge these abilities better. Or
because me and Charlie, we've got decent lane mechanics. I could overemphasize my lane mechanics and win trades in a way that's not replicable. Just because I'm just dodging all their abilities, I'm just winning intuitively because I understand kind of what they do. But it's just not replicable, and I can't teach that way.
No.
Yeah, playing solo queue. Just speaking from my perspective, like playing solo queue with the intention of making all of my games replicable it's so different. Like, just coming from the perspective of like I've played the game since season 2 of 10,000 plus games on this game. Now, the last couple of months, I'm not playing to gain LP and climb and stuff. I'm playing to
it's a big mindset
teach.
Shift.
It's a crazy mindset shift, and it's really rewarding. Honestly, it's been good fun.
It really forces you to explain the game. You know what's the Einstein quote? Like, you don't really understand something unless you can explain it like simply.
Yeah,
that's what it forces you to really do.
I've become such a much better holistic player of the game just through its top lane journey.
Definitely an experience that we won't forget. All right, well, that wraps up our episode. Good work, everyone. We'll see you top laners in the Top Lane Academy. Keep on improving. We'll see you next week.